Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. Amma ba'd. We're going to continue what we left off from last time, and we talked about regarding the minor signs of the Day of Judgment. So the minor signs of the Day of Judgment was such where you had two categories. One was that it happens at one specific time, that sign, and then the other one which is continuous amount of a certain action which has been happening. So far we're still on the first part where certain signs, where we said that the first sign was the death of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there was the infighting between the Muslims and so forth. We're going to continue and then go on towards regarding the different more different signs. And this is now later on in life, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions regarding the rise of the Turks. So the rise of the Turks. So the Turks are originally not from Turkey. Turkey is a very new concept, it's a very new area and so forth. Not new area, but it's a new name given. But they were actually from you find the Turkmenistan, the Caucasus kind of areas, the northern areas, above that Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. Those were the original guys from that area, and they came down towards Anatolia and so forth. So what happens is the rise of the Turks. This has been predicted by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this race would be the dominant and overpowering race over the Arabs. So remember this, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in the Arab lands, he's in Makkah, he's in Medina, and he's talking to the Arab people saying the rise of the Turks. All the way far away, all in those lands, and they're going to be dominant over the Arabs as well. So you find, the Mongolians and the Caucasus regions, they're almost like the same group of people, they're just different tribes. So Turkmenistan and so forth. And what happened, they came and they conquered modern day, what is Turkey nowadays, and those are the people who are the Ottomans, their heritage was from there. So the Arabs and the Turks, they hardly ever interacted with one another. So this is the time when Rasulullah is mentioning this, and they've hardly ever interacted with the Turks before, or those people from Turkmenistan. They're a very far away race. How would he ever know regarding who they are, what's going to happen with them, why they're doing this, and regarding their rise and so forth. Rasulullah, and there's a very famous saying where he mentions Utrukul atrak ma tarakukum. Utrukul atrak ma tarakukum. So Rasulullah mentions that leave the Turks as long as they leave you. Leave them alone, let them be roaming over there. As long as they leave you, leave them alone. So this is like, letting them do what they need to do. They will win. And you find a certain group which is called the Seljuks. Seljuks was a very famous tribes which came together, and they had their own kind of dynasty. They want Khilafah, so there wasn't a Khalifa. They were called for them to be the leaders of the Muslimin at that time. But the Seljuks were there, and they were also part of the Turks, and they converted towards Islam. And you had the people like Alp Arslan. Alp Arslan was a very famous Muslim leader. He was a hero, and he's one of those models that we should be following his lifestyle. He's a very important person in history, and this person was amongst one of the leaders of the Seljuks, and then eventually they after a while turned into the Ottomans, Ottoman Turks and so forth, and they were dominant, and then Khilafat was acquired by them, meaning the Seljuks never acquired Khilafah, Ayyubis never acquired Khilafah. But that was at the time you had the Abbasids, and the Abbasids were very weak and poor after they got trampled by the Mongolians and Genghis Khan and so forth. And then after that you had small dynasties, and then the rise of the Ottomans, and then it took them 100 and so years, or more than that, 200 years of now building a base in modern day Turkey and so forth and its surrounding areas. Then they said, look, Khilafah is now ours, we're now being called the Khalifa. And now in the 1500s it became the first non-Arab Khilafah was given towards the Turks. So where did this come from? This is a prediction from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that 1,000 years later this is going to happen. 1,000 years, he didn't know nothing about it, but yet we see it, and we've heard regarding the historical facts regarding how the Turks were this and the Turks were that, and they became the dominant force and so forth. How did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam know this? So this is one of the minor signs that he is relating towards us regarding this as well. And then related towards the Turks was regarding the Constantinople. So Constantinople was a very famous city, arguably the most famous city in the world at that time was Constantinople. It was underneath the Romans, it was underneath the Christians and so forth. It was a great Roman empire. And then Obviously, it was a center of kind of Christendom. The whole Christianity was surrounded, or was the base was is Constantinople. So that was a huge fortified city. Year after year, century after century, people tried to conquer it, but they couldn't conquer it. It was too fortified, and it was too much. And then what did Rasulullah ﷺ say? That Muslims will conquer this great city of Constantinople. Who were they at that time? They were nobody. At that time, they only had a few thousand troops. They had what, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 troops maybe. Maybe a bit more, maybe 20, 30,000 troops. And then they're going to conquer, the Muslims are going to conquer the best city or the biggest city in the world, or the most fortified city in the world. Where did this prediction come from? So this was a minor sign of the Day of Judgment, that regarding this prediction, which Rasulullah ﷺ said that this will happen. This is one of the minor signs of Qiyamah, that the Muslims will conquer Constantinople, such a great kind of a fortified city. Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala, in the time of the Sahaba, Muawiyah, he also got very close. He didn't do it, but he got very, very close, and he's part of the army that went there. And the army that went there, he went there and he got his naval fleet. So in the time of Uthman radiallahu ta'ala was the first naval Muslim fleet. They went into the navy and by sea, and they went through there, onto the seaside, and then they went through, and then they attacked Constantinople, and then they attempted to conquer it, but they couldn't. And then there's one very famous Sahabi by the name of, the Sahabi is buried there, buried at the gates of Constantinople. When you go to Turkey and you go to Istanbul, you'll find this person's, or they say that this person's this Sahabi is buried there. Many people have been to Istanbul, right? Ayyub Ansari, Abu Ayyub Ansari. Abu Ayyub Ansari, which is who? He was the first person to welcome Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his house. When he moved from Makkah to Medina, Abu Ayyub Ansari was the one who had a double-story house. And he one who shared his house. He made Rasulullah as a guest in his house. He was of very elderly age, obviously, at that time. And this is now, he went out in battle, and he was in his, some has mentioned, 70s, 80s, 90s. He went out into the battlefield, and he is buried there. He was shaheed, made shaheed there, and he's buried at the gates of Istanbul, Constantinople. So this was regarding one of the minor signs of the Day of Judgment. This conquest changed, literally, this conquest changed the whole history of the course of history, this prediction. Because Constantinople, once that is conquered, you're conquering the whole area. Once you conquer a city, then you're conquering the whole area as well. And the whole of that Christianity around that area and so forth, they're all conquered by the Muslims. And you find out how great the Muslim empire was. And which year did Constantinople get conquered? Any Turks here? No. Very famous year. You talk about it all the time. 1453. It's a very famous year, and it changed the course of history, especially for Muslims. It changed the whole course of history. The dynamics that we have, the whole Arabian Peninsula, the whole area when you're looking at the eastern side of Europe, that whole area was Muslim, and that was still, you find remnants of Islam there, and in the whole Arabian Peninsula got saved. They were saved from any kind of coming that way. Now they've taken over the whole place. So the whole of the eastern side, now you go to the whole of Asia as well, now you find that is all protected by the Muslims. Right? At that point, that was where Christianity was the beginning and the end. But now you had more before, now it completely ended, and that was a huge victory. And there's another conquest, and some have mentioned that, is there another conquest of Istanbul? Istanbul is the recent name, 100 years old or so, the new name of Constantinople. And whether it will happen again, another conquest of Istanbul or Constantinople in the future, when Mahdi arrives, this is also a possibility which ulama have mentioned as well. So these are some of the signs of the Day of Judgment, and to be prepared for that time and to know about regarding these things is also very beneficial for us as well. When you look at one more type of one other minor sign which has been mentioned, is that in the Arabian Peninsula there will be high-rise buildings. This is also something which is, let's take you back to Dubai, Abu Dhabi. You took the UAE 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. You look in the 70s, in the 80s. And what had happened to those people? Complete nothing. Desert. Nothing there. And now when you look at it now, in the last few years, you find that it's full of high-rise buildings. So this is one of the predictions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that everyone knew that the Arabians, the surrounding areas, the Arabians are backwards. The Arabians are like this, the Arabians are like that. They got no language, they got no books, they got no big buildings. The amount they had was probably 2-story, and that's it. They didn't go any further. Anywhere else, then they had big buildings, they had palaces, they had everything in the different areas. But Arabs now didn't have nothing. They had to import everything. Arabs were, at that time, they had to import everything. They couldn't build anything from themselves. They couldn't produce anything. They had nothing. Absolutely nothing at all. There was no real civilization in the Arabs at that time. So how can this even happen, this prediction, that there would be high-rise buildings come from the Arabs? You guys, you don't even have a second 2-story building. You don't have anything with you, and you're supposed to be doing this, and you're supposed... So this is the prediction given. The Sahaba was like, how is that going to happen? For example, if I was to give a prediction now, that something was going to happen, like the Fiji Islands will be the most powerful island in the world, or the most powerful country in the whole world. People are like, what are you talking about? People are like this, and they'll think like this, right? Why? Because there's so much superpowers in the world. How can someone small as so country as the Fiji Islands is going to be conquering the whole world? Then you think that this person's crazy, this person's mad. But this was a prediction of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that such a nation that had no books, that had no nothing, that had no knowledge, that had no ilm. And then when Rasulullah sallallahu came there and brought the message of Islam, then they had something to work with. Now they had that jazba, now they had that enthusiasm, now they had something a driving force, now they had that guidance, now they had that path which was clear. Now they fought for they gave their wealth, their health, their life for Islam, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And look where in a few years time they conquered superpowers like Persia and the Roman Empire. So it mentions here the barefooted shepherds. The barefooted shepherds will come and they will build these high-rise and compete in high-rise buildings. This is some of the minor signs of the Day of Judgment. Look how profound it is, coming from the Rasul of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has hardly travelled outside of Arabia. Don't think he's ever travelled, and he's making predictions about this group and that group and this nation. It's going to happen, is this going to happen, that's going to happen, and so forth. And now we're seeing it nowadays. With our own eyes we're seeing it. With our own eyes we're seeing it. We've even seen that the likes of those who are now in charge of the Arabian Peninsula and there's countries there, that look at their grandfather. Just look at their grandfathers. They used to go, and even their grandfathers, we got them on recording, even their grandfathers to say, yeah, we used to be in the hot desert sand, and then we didn't have any shoes. We used to run around barefooted. And now we've got buildings in the Burj Khalifa, and we've got this and we've got that, and they're competing with one another. The prediction of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So again, he adds even more base and even more weight towards him being the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is something to really wrap our hands or our minds around this. So it's very important that a person realizes what he is saying, in what context he is saying, in what position he is saying this, and now we, 1400 years ago, we are seeing it with our own eyes. So again, it's the wonder of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'll mention regarding the general trends now. So I mentioned this is an incident that could happen, that is an incident, the Turks was an incident, Constantinople was an incident, the fighting between the Sahaba was an incident. Now we're going to go towards the general trends of what's happening in this dunya, and this is the prediction of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'll start off with this one. And this one is a whole bayan in itself and a whole lecture in itself. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions this. How long have I got? 7. So this is a hadith in Tirmidhi. This mentions this hadith that every ummah is tested. Every ummah is tested with one fitna, and the test of my ummah is wealth, is money. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the fitna of my ummah is wealth, is money. Back in the days, when you look at the time of the Sahaba, yes, money came in, but before that time, money came in. Before they were in Makkah, they had hardly anything. They had hardly anything. Or let's just say that even in the time of the Sahaba, how many people are actually rich? A handful of people. Not many, only a handful of people actually had a certain amount of wealth. In Arabia, they had only a few people that had wealth. Now you look at nowadays, how much people or how much Muslims, there's so much wealth coming through the hands of Muslims, the bank balances of Muslims. They've got so much assets. You find that money is so openly used amongst the Muslims. You find that everyone in the West, let's say everyone in the West, compared to what the people are in the different areas that don't got anything, Everyone in the West has got some amount of money and has got a lot of money. They'll be counted as wealthy. If a person from the east side of the world is looking at the people in the West and saying, what life you've got, you're rich, you're wealthy, you've got a lot of money, you're giving zakat, you've got a lot of money. This is how it was, and this is the mindset. Bukhari mentioned this hadith that the money came from Bahrain one day. This is an incident I leave on. This Bahrain, there was a certain conquest, money was coming into the Masjid of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam one time. They were waiting for it. Nabi Sallallahu, so it came in. Now it reached the Masjid. So now there's like a booty. That is like gold, that is like swords, that is like this. There's so many different things there. And they go and distribute it. So what happens that Nabi Sallallahu was going to distribute it at Fajr time. The Ilan was made at Fajr time. It came in and now Fajr time he's going to distribute it. So what happened? Once Fajr was prayed, so he's there, he prays Fajr Salah, he turns around, he sees the whole masjid full. He sees the whole masjid full. So he's going to say, he asks the people, he says, it's like Jum'ah basically, like Jum'ah. So Rasulullah says, it looks like, he says to the people, it looks like you heard that the money has just arrived. It looks like you came for Fajr because the money has just arrived. So the people said, yes. People said, yes. Remember, they were very bighayr takalluf. They said, yes, we did come. This is the reason why. So Rasulullah said, I give you glad tidings, number one. You will get your money. I will give you your money. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wallahi, I am not worried that you will be poor after I die. I'm not going to be worried about money, for my ummah. You will get enough money. I am worried that this world will open its treasures to you and you will compete with one another to see who has the most, and in that competing you will destroy yourself like the nations before you. And that is what we see nowadays. How many of us are competing with the next person? That I've got this, I also want this, this person wants it. I've got a car like this, I have to have a car like that. Or you've got a 4-bedroom now, I'm going to make a loft and I'm going to make it 4-bedroom. Or you've got a garden and it's got a little shed, I'm going to make a shed. Or you've got a Tesla, I'm going to have a Tesla. Or you've got electric, I'm going to have electric. Or you've got, and that's what that is. You're competing. Rasulullah sallallahu said that this is going to be the fitna of my ummah. The fitna of my ummah is wealth. The fitna of my ummah is wealth. And he sallallahu is predicting this as a rich, us as a rich ummah, and he himself has he even eaten a full meal once, or a full meal in such a while? 3-4 months used to go past, he used to have nothing. 6 weeks without cooking. 6 weeks without cooking. But yet for us, wealth. We look at our dastakhan, our sufra, and we see how much meals, how much, 1 course, 2 course, 3 course, 4 course meals. So wealth is not an issue, and he never had the worry that we will be a poor nation. We will be a rich nation, and this is going to be our fitna. How much of the fitna? This is the prediction of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's for us to try and be very aware of it. Number one, this is the fitna. That wealth is a fitna, and it's something to really, really be aware of. That am I part of this fitna? Am I going to be losing to this fitna? Am I going to be failing this test, or am I going to be passing this test? It's okay to have money in your hand. Don't have it in your heart. Don't have it in your heart. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance and for protection from all of these minor signs and then all these fitnas as well. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our family members, to protect ourselves, to protect our communities, the whole Muslim at large. We protect our masajid, protect our madaris, protect all our institutions. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to really protect from every type of fitna that's going to come our way. The fitna of Dajjal, the fitna of the wars that are going to come up, the fitna of all of the natural disasters. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protection from all this. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protection from shayateen, from the jinn, from all of the black magic, from all of the evils that are outside. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protection from all of the evils that can be even thought about, and protection from every single thing that a person can know about. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance, for forgiveness and acceptance of all our actions. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanallah bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Everyone's requested inshallah to go towards the back and then go to the tent inshallah.
smoothie or
Only breakfast.
no, you used to have spinach, yeah? Now you want to pakora now, yeah?
No, I don't. Nothing. This could do.
Kajuri.
Maybe one.
I'm staying here tonight. I don't want to eat at this time. Can you keep some of me for after the Ravi?
I went to His Lane yesterday.